All right. Well, we are live, and I'm here today with John O'Connor. John, I feel like this is a long overdue show.
Yeah, we were trying to get this to happen for a little while, so I'm glad we can do it. We can do it.
So I know, me too. Well, thanks for having me on. And something I hope we could talk about today, and I could just hear from you. I know as a young man in his 20s, it's sometimes difficult navigating the world and the many opportunities to pursue the life paths that could be taken. And I think it would be helpful to hear from you and learn a little bit about what you do, some of the lessons you've picked up along the way for some other younger men who may be navigating this on their own.
Yeah. So when you say navigating, like difficult navigating, like what aspects do you find most difficult? And is there any ones that actually you feel pretty secure in or grounded in, or feel really you actually have like a good sense of flow?
Yeah, I would say the difficult area for me in particular is understanding how my passions and my skills and my gifts as a person, the things that I feel in my heart that are my calling, translate into a career or income, and kind of molding those things into something that the world recognizes as worthy of funding or worthy of investing in. And I think that's difficult sometimes because we have things in life that really ignite a flame in our heart, but turning that into something actionable and turning that into something that's like practical as a career path can be difficult.
Yeah. And growing up, I'm 50 now. So growing up when I was a kid, it was very different in terms of like what people would pay for and what the tools that were available to create. When I see some people making tons of money, just posting crazy videos about something they're excited about. There's so many different pathways to making money. But I think the biggest thing is for you, there's the thing that you do that other people then pay you for. But like, what's the thing that fills you up, that lights you up, that gets you excited? Right. And I think having a sense of like what that is, because some people default to, well, I can do this because I can get paid. Somebody will pay me, someone will recognize me for that, but it's not necessarily like who I am or what really lights me up. What lights you up right now? What do you feel is the thing that you have a sense of passion for? Do you have a sense of like what that is right now?
I love learning and I love sharing what I learn with other people. And if I can share something that helps someone make a small tweak in their life and their thought patterns and their behaviors and their direction, then I feel like I've made a ripple effect impact. And I studied psychology, and so I'm super passionate about learning about the mind and the mind-body connection in particular, which I don't feel gets as much attention in the academic world. It's a little bit of sometimes people think it's a woo idea, connecting the mind and the body and the relationship between the two. And I love just helping people just drop into their whole internal world.
It's funny how people think that's woo-woo, right? And somehow it keeps you from sharing the thing that most lights you up, because you're like, oh, someone's going to judge me in some way, shape, or form because they're going to think I'm woo-woo. Yeah, it's interesting because, when I think about the path to how I got here, it wasn't very, I didn't know as I was making decisions, like where they would go. And a lot of times the things that presented itself were not, oh, I'm going to do this. Like it wasn't something that I generated as an idea. It almost like emerged outside and was kind of like a whisper or a thought, or I fell into it, or somehow I found myself into this thing. And it's like, oh, wow, I had no idea. Right. So there's a little bit of the unfolding process when you're young, because, and when you're young, you can have an unfolding process, and you have a limited experience and reference point. So it's hard to have a clear sense. Some people have really clear sense when they're young. I used to feel really jealous about people who were like, I want to be X. And then they just like dove into that and just created that arc. Now the assumption is that that's just going to lead to happiness. And I don't know. I mean, we can kind of dive into the happiness component, but like in my early career, the reasons why I did things a lot of times were selfish, maybe, I guess, because it was really for me. It wasn't really for other people. It was for other people. Like, oh, I want to make an impact. But really at its essence was I wanted to create a sense of security or confidence or learn, develop, and grow some aspect of myself. And so, maybe I'll share a little bit about my story. We can kind of like weave it in a little bit. But school was never my thing. Like I didn't really excel at school, basic school, right? Like high school and college. And I think primarily because like most people who have ADHD, it's like if you're not really interested in it, then it's like you're just shut down. The attention filter is not open, right?
Yeah.
So for me, like when I'm really interested in something, I'm wide open. I'm fully engaged, almost like obsessively. But school, when I was in high school, nothing really grabbed me. And when it did, I did very well. I'd get like an A in a subject, and then I would get like C's in all my other subjects. And the college journey was very staccato, I guess you can call it. I went to 3 different colleges. And by the last one, I basically stopped going because there was nothing that really captured me. I was like, oh, maybe I'll go into business, or maybe I'll go into, nursing school. And then once I started to get into the academics of it and realize, wait, I don't want to actually work with sick people. The idea of it sounded great, but actually the reality was very different. And so I wound up stopping school. And in that process of stopping, someone offered me an opportunity to work with them in a multi-level marketing company. So I started selling air filters and water filters. And really what hooked me was there was this large impact message. Like we were going to, and this was in early mid-90s, where I was selling organic products and products that didn't have like chemicals for your hair, right? Water filters because there was chlorine in the water. People weren't as savvy around that stuff back then. But there were 2 drivers. One was, wow, I can make an impact. But 2, actually, I can make money because I didn't have any money, right? I was like, how do I generate? Like, what am I going to do with myself? And I kind of bought the hook, line, and sinker of a multi-level marketing company. And I'm really grateful for that time because I learned a lot about building rapport, learning how to stand up in front of a group and pitch an idea. I learned about how to sell and to market and put a bit of a business lens in my mind. But at the time, this was pre-sobriety for me. So I was smoking a lot of pot, which, by the way, it's really hard to grow, scale, and evolve as a human when you're smoking weed.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And I think there's this sort of like sense of like, it's not really a big deal. I smoke weed. It's all good. But for the most part, I would say there's a bell curve of people who hyper-perform when they smoke weed. That's a small subsection of humans. But it's very difficult to, like when you're smoking pot, I used to say that you're trying to sharpen your sword, but you're using a cloth. And so you're dampening all of life's rough edges. And as the rough edges are what sharpen your sword. Like when you really put the sword to the grinding stone, it hurts. It's hot. It's friction. It's heat. When you're smoking weed, it softens it. It puts like a little cushion in between. So you don't really get a really sharp blade. It sort of dulls the blade, right? So I always make recommendations for people who are hyper kind of like, they're passionate. They want to create in the world. Like minimize the substances is usually at the first place.
Yeah.
It pays a lot of dividends. But I was smoking a lot of pot at the time. And so I didn't have a really good way of tracking, like, oh, if I make money, let me reinvest in product versus spend the money. I didn't have like the basic fundamentals of business. So eventually I ran out of cash and I went into a lot of debt. And so I wound up with a lot of products, and that was that. And I had to close that business down. Simultaneously, my dad worked in television. He worked for a soap opera. He was a videotape editor, executive editor. And I would work with him in the edit room, and I'd work on the studio floor like a boom cable guy. So like when they move the boom, the microphones and the cameras, I like move the wires. Like that was me. And when I did that and I was in relationship with all these actors, they were so free. They were so in their body, not self-conscious. They can be in front of a camera and emote. And that was totally not where I was in my life at that time. I was probably, 19, 20, around that age, 21. And it was more like 19 and 20. And so I looked at these people and I was like, wow, I want that. Like, I want what they have. I want to feel like free, relaxed in my body, totally express myself. So I was like, I'm going to go to acting school because I want to be free, because I felt so constricted and self-conscious, and probably because I was smoking a lot of pot. I was probably more paranoid than I realized.
Right.
But there was also a lot of self-consciousness. And so I became an actor, not because that was my passion. I wanted to be an actor. It was, I think unconsciously, it was like I wanted to feel free, and acting was a path to do that. And so I actually went to acting school. And then alongside that, not having any like a college pathway ahead of me, I had this, like, it was almost like a voice spoke to me, and it was just like, go to massage school. I was like, I had never thought about it. It wasn't something that I did. I mean, I had good hands, right? But it never occurred to me. It wasn't something like I always wanted to be a massage therapist. It just was like a little voice one day. And I was like, oh, massage school. That's interesting. And then synchronicity kind of opened up this weird little portal. And 2 weeks later, I was in a massage program.
That's how it usually works. You have the idea, you open up to it, and
then there it is.
To another.
And it didn't generate from like a passion or a skill or like, oh, people were paying me. It just came in as an idea. And that's why I always tell people, like, sometimes the portal is like a little tiny whisper or a little knock, and it doesn't look like anything. It's not like, oh, here's your pathway. It's just like a little thing. And this was like a little thing. It didn't really have like a lot of heat on it. It was just like, go to massage school. I'm like, oh. And I just remember coming home that night and telling my sister, yeah, I had this thought about going to massage school. She's like, my friend's in massage school. You should talk to her. And that night I spoke to her. And then 2 weeks later, I was in school. And that path, I did that for 17 years. Massage became my main career path. And it just opened up. 3 years into that, I had my own business and I started working for myself. So I no longer worked for anybody else. I was an entrepreneur. So I had my own massage studio for 10 or 15 years. Wow, it's probably 15 years. And that was amazing. It took me everywhere. Everywhere I traveled, I had a skill that was meaningful and important, created impact. And then there was an exchange there. People would pay me for that skill, right? So it was meaningful. I made money. I was good at it. I was really good at it. People loved the work that I did. So I had like instant feedback, like positive feedback. And so I did sort of the massage and the acting path for like a good 15 years simultaneously. And acting was a very interesting journey. I never really excelled at it. I think that there's a certain type of individual that just thrives at it and they just have it.
Yeah.
Like I didn't have it. I didn't have like the X factor. But it gave me everything that I needed. And it's interesting because now when I do keynotes or I'm running trainings or I'm running programs or I'm in front of 1,000 people on stage, I'm really confident. I'm really competent. I'm grounded. I'm relaxed. I'm playful from all my acting training. So the acting path wasn't the direct route of success. And some people would say, oh my God, I failed as an actor. I'm not worthy, all the negative self-talk. For me, I was like, like I didn't succeed, quote unquote, as an actor, but all those skills have given me an incredible path to make an impact from stage, right? So sometimes like in order to get from the bedroom to the living room, you got to go through the hallway.
Right.
And the hallway, people get stuck because they're looking for the one hallway, like my life purpose. And it's like, well, maybe this isn't about life purpose. Maybe this is the move one of 3 or 4 that get you to the thing that ultimately is where you land and like kind of really find your power.
Right. And acting in a way moved into this public speaking role, which can be a form of acting if you look at it from that lens.
100%.
It's all the same thing. You have the, not that you're not being authentic, but you're a character on stage in a way, and then you have a certain message to give over, and you have to step into that role and be 100% that person, not anything else.
Yeah. That's very true. So, and then on the massage side was really interesting was, now the past 16 years, I've been coaching CEOs and entrepreneurs and change makers and really anybody who's trying to manifest something big in the world, like I'm that catalyst, activator, container that helps them do that. And in order for them to do that, there has to be a level of trust. There has to be a level of rapport. There has to be a space where I can tune in to not only what they're saying, but what's actually not being said. And as a body worker, I'd have to meet someone for the first time, and they'd have to be a lot of trust and rapport and safety for them to open up and relax on the table. And then they would tell me one thing, and then I had to go, well, yeah, you say this is the problem, but that's really not the problem. And most people come with a problem, but that's not the real problem. The real problem is way upstream. And so being a good body worker, tracking what's the root cause of the issue that's coming in. And I think for a coach, it's the same thing. It's like people come with a set of conditions, right? They're not showing up the way they want to show up. They're not feeling the way they want to feel. They want a certain goal, but they're not quite sure how to achieve it. And so they're kind of lost or spinning or in a rut, right? There's a certain amount of there's a mindset thing that gets in the way of them stepping into the thing they know deeply. So there's like a disconnect, like their body and their mind are not talking and they're not in harmony. And so, yeah, so usually when people are presenting something, I have to really backtrack and find what's happening upstream and what's the change that I can make. What's the intervention I can do with them to unlock that untapped potential. Right.
So a lot of the central theme I'm hearing in your story that you just shared so far is that having this end goal in mind, X amount of years down the line isn't necessarily the right way to go because you don't know how many steps you're going to have to take to get there. But I love what Jordan Peterson says about just doing something, just taking some action of any form, whether it's going to acting school or going to massage therapy school, and having that momentum lead you into something else further down the road. I resonated a lot with what you said about you thought you wanted something and it turned out to not be what you wanted it to be. Mm-hmm. And I feel that very personally right now as I just finished college and trying things out. And, you have this, I had this ideal vision of what this period of life would look like and shifts into something else entirely, sometimes painfully. And it's part of the process.
I mean, the thing is, there's no way you're going to have clarity on what the ideal setup is for you right now. You don't know.
Yeah.
There's no, what we think is ideal, most of the time is not ideal. Right. And so if I look at all of the people that I've coached, I mean, some of them, there's one guy I'm coaching now. I coached him 10 years ago when he started his company for 2 years. Just started coaching him again. And he's now at the $10 million mark. He wasn't even making $1 million when I first started coaching him. And now he's making $10 million. And the pain that he was in the beginning, there was so many dynamics working against him internally, trauma-wise, business, lack of experience, environment, people. There was a lot of stuff going on. But when we look back at all of those non-ideal situations, looking back, they were so ideal. At the time, they sucked. He was just really upset as to the complex of situation, the complex situation he was in. They were all quote unquote bad and negative. But looking back, those were the activators for him. So sometimes the thing that we're in, we don't think it's ideal. And my whole thing now is anything I'm in, can I utilize it? Can I operate from this place? I call it utilization, which is no matter what's occurring, it becomes fuel or some sort of catalyst or some resource. Can I alchemize this thing I'm in, whatever it is, to be beneficial in some way, shape, or form? Not on the surface. And that's where sometimes you have to get really creative and going, what is this situation forcing me to either develop, to reframe it? What is it forcing me to step into that I've been resisting? Because that's another thing too. When you're in a non-ideal situation, most of my biggest changes came when my back was really against the wall and I was in really compromised situations. And as a result of that, I had no other choice. I was forced to make a decision. And I think everything that I've done, most of the biggest things, I had my back up against the wall. I wasn't really in an ideal situation, but because of that, I'm here now. And that's the key. It's when you're young, you do have some time to make some mistakes. I always recommend like people getting out of college, like the basic stuff. Like you were saying, Jordan Peterson says, just do something. Like if you think about going from one end of the city to the next end of the city and you're not quite sure which way to go, if you walk for a few miles and then you assess from there, what do I see? What do I notice? What do I hear? Oh, wow, there's a park. Oh, I know that park. That's on this, so I'm like looking for landmarks in life. But if you're just standing on the same corner over and over and over again, waiting for someone to come and save you or whatever it is, and there's no new information coming in, you're stuck, right? So in the goal setting approach, like I have a different model with goal setting. Like most people have a very fixed outcome they want to achieve. So all of their focus, hyper focus is on this one thing, which is great. I mean, sometimes you need to really hyper focus on a goal to get it. In the business, it's really important to do that. But there's another way to look at goals, which is, okay, so here's like an ideal outcome. And then as I move towards that outcome, maybe a few steps, a few things that I do, what's new and different? Having executed a few things, do I still want the outcome? What if I feel like, because this is a lot of people set goals because they think that the goal is going to make them feel a certain way. Like I want this because I'm going to feel secure. I'll feel confident. I'll feel successful. And 9 times out of 10, people achieve a thing and they don't feel the way they thought they were going to feel. And so my whole thing is, what if you can feel that feeling now? Would you still want the goal? Like if you thought, oh, I want this because I want to feel secure. But what if you felt secure now? Would you still want to go after the goal? Most people are like, well, if I feel secure, no, I don't want that. I was trying to get that so I could feel secure.
Right. I feel like that's a belief system that's very deeply ingrained in our culture as well, in America especially. And I've been actively fighting against that and resisting it because there is this model that not everyone follows, but many do follow, where I'm going to retire at 65. And when I do, I'll have all the money I ever need to do whatever I want with it. And you set this goal that you think you want down the road, and you're like, okay, I just need to put my head down, work my ass off and get there. And then I'll be able to live the rest of my life happily. And most people get bored and go back to work at that age. And people are living much longer and they have more that they want to do. And B, who says that you'll be happy when you get there?
Right.
And why sacrifice all that time?
When I'm retired, then I'll be happy. Then I can be happy. Then I can do all the things that I want to do. And you're how old now?
23.
23, right? So let's see. So 42 years from now.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure what the world's going to look like in 42 years.
Very true.
Right? Like I don't know what's going to look like in 10 years. And because I work with some of these AI leaders, and watching what's happening behind the scenes is kind of frightening in terms of like, where do humans fit into the system? If an agent, you have agents, and once ASI comes in, like artificial super intelligence, and you have access to a super intelligent being, you can run a company, and you used to have 30 people and you have one, and you have an AI agent or several or many that now are doing the work of all the humans. So I have no idea what 40 years from now is going to look like. It's going to be wild. It's going to be really, really interesting. And the other thing too about retirement's really interesting. And this is something that I didn't really have a lot of exposure to people in their 40s who made enough money to no longer need to work. And now that's a lot of the people that I either work with or hang around, like people who have amassed a certain amount of money where money is no longer the driver. Most people, their main driver for work is financial security. And then what happens when you achieve financial security? And it's a very big issue. And I have several clients I'm working with right now that have gotten to that place. And there's a deep sense of loss, confusion, a lack of clarity on what they should be doing and what they should be focusing on, because they've achieved pretty much everything. They have a family and they have kids, they have money, they have houses, they have everything. They've achieved a certain level of success in their business. Now what do I do? Right? There's only so much like hedonistic pleasure that will fill you up. I mean, maybe you do that a little bit and then it's like, okay, now what? Right? Like and that's where they have to turn inward and start to find I call it the revisioning stage, like visioning from that place where the driver is no longer just financial accumulation. Like what's the next? David Brooks has a book called The Second Mountain. Talks about that first mountain, right? Achieving, financial security. The second mountain, like what's the thing driving you up the second mountain? What's the why? Right. And so, yeah, that whole piece in the beginning, a large part of it is, okay, like I got to survive. I got to pay for myself. Like, how am I going to make money? Like that's a huge amount of, I don't know how it feels for you, but that's a large driver for people. Like what's going to pay me?
Yeah, it's a huge driver. And it's not something I felt that my college degree really prepared me for. Maybe I understood how to think better and how to articulate my ideas better. And the skill set that I gained from my major, I'll certainly take with me.
What did you study?
Psychology.
Okay. Yeah.
But taking that and then going out into the world and into a world that says, turn your skill set into money, there's not much of an education for that in some of these traditional systems. I'm glad you brought up AI and where we're going in the future, because it would likely look very different than it does now. I think, and this is why I'm hesitant to just like go unconscious into this model of working till I'm 65 and retiring. I think we're moving into an era where down the road, we're not going to be working because there's certain jobs that need to be done in the world to maintain humankind and stability. I think we're ascending in a way that we're going to, as a collective, grow to fulfill our soul's purpose in new ways through things that robots can't produce, like music and art and spiritual connection. Those are all things that, as great as AI is at maybe running the world one day, it can't replace human spirit. And it's something that we often don't have the time and energy to invest all of ourselves into, because we're concerned with, okay, what bills need to be paid? What do I need to do today? What's on the schedule? I think that there's a positive side to a lot of this growth in AI, and some people get very scared about it, but I do think it'll open the door towards human flourishment in a new way.
I agree 100%. And I think that when your locus of control is external, that's where fear, anxiety, worry, hopelessness occur, right? So if you think AI is happening to you,
right,
you're going to have a lot of anxiety, right? But if you think AI is happening for you and your locus of control is here, meaning like I have agency to be in relationship to what's occurring and what's emerging in the ecosystem, and staying present, listening, surrounding yourself with people who also are listening and engaging in the environment in a way that's generative. That's the key. Like, because I have some clients that I'm coaching that have launched and exited maybe 3, 4, 5 companies very successfully. And their new companies, what they're saying with AI is all of their experience no longer applies. So everything that they've ever done and learned in this new frontier, they're just having to be with it in real time and discover and play and figure it out, because there's no reference for it. It's completely new. And it's kind of fascinating to watch some of these people who have a lot of experience lean into this and like develop new ways of seeing and creating and discovering what's possible in the world. But I do think that there is a lot of human flourishing coming. And I think what I hope to see is the first intention is to kind of pull people out of poverty. Like that's in some way, shape, or form, AI, like there's a lot of narratives that it's going to put people into poverty, like they're going to lose their jobs. But I would love to see the opposite happen, where AI actually lifts people out of poverty. Like because of technology, all of the people that are going hungry, don't have food, don't have shelter, clean water, all these things begin to get cleared, like on across the whole planet. Like that's like my hope and my vision is that AI activates that. And, do you know the whole K recovery theory?
I don't.
So like when COVID hit, it was like a K. The bottom aspect of the K, a lot of people during COVID, their lives got worse. They lost their jobs. They kind of went down in terms of like wealth creation or success and flourishing. And then the upper part of the K, there were some people that doubled, tripled, 10x'd everything. Right. Yeah. And it was very interesting because I coach a very small niche community of people who are running companies. And I would say 95% of them did amazing during COVID. Like it was, so everybody was struggling, and yet there was a small pocket of people that were thriving. Right. And one of my guys that I'm coaching that runs an AI company, he said it's going to be the same thing with AI. There'll be a section of the population that are on the bottom part of the K that lose their job, don't reskill, don't have any pathways to making money, and they're actually in a worse off position. And then there'll be a population on the upper part of the K that are going to thrive. And it's just going to continue to do that, where larger and larger amounts of people are going to struggle and smaller groups of people are going to thrive. We're just splitting, these pockets of these pools of people, which makes me concerned, obviously, when I think about, okay, what's the downstream impact of that? I don't know. Right. And so I hope the people who are running these things are actually starting to think about what are we going to do? But for you, there's a couple of things I want to share. One is, like you saying, like, what am I going to do so that, and then thinking about retirement at 65, I think we should just don't even think about that. Let's just put that on the shelf for now.
Yeah. Right? I'm okay doing that.
Yeah. That's really like even me at 50, I'm not even thinking about, actually I do think about it sometimes. I think about, oh, wow, at 65, what would I like to see? Because I have a lot of experience now. What would be an ideal ecosystem for me? Or how would I want to set up my life? Living half the time here in Boulder and half the time in Europe. What do I want to be working on? And there are things that are informing when I think about my wife and I in 10 or 15 years, where do we want to be playing? What do we want to be doing? What kind of work do we want to be doing? That I'm seeding now. I'm actually taking small steps in the skill area, right? Because when we think about acquiring a skill, every skill that you acquire, when we think about the future potential possibilities, what's possible for you expands exponentially, right? So let's say, for example, right now you have no skill of public speaking. Let's just imagine that. You can't get on stage, you're totally self-conscious, you feel really frightened by the whole thing. And let's just say you get to a place where you feel really good on stage, you can deliver a message, you're comfortable. In 10 years, what's possible for you? If that becomes a pathway that you continue to grow and develop, what are some of the things that you could potentially step into? Right. And so but if you didn't have that skill and 10 years passed, your future is very different, because then your choices are limited. Right. So I'm always, for young guys and gals, I'm always saying, find skills that through time open up portals. So it's I can go left or right, but now I can go left. I have 20 lefts, 20 rights, 20 straights, because now I have all these different dimensions I can go, because I have a skill set. Right. So that was one. The other one for me, when I became an NLP trainer and did hypnosis work, it was the same thing. It's how can I take these skills to create change in the unconscious? And what opportunities will that allow me to do? It'll allow me to write a book on that. I'm working on my podcast, the client work that I do, how I run and train leaders and teams, how I create, I don't know if there's a book called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. That base layer with any team, there has to be a level of trust in order for the team to thrive, right? In order for the team to scale and become a high performing team. All of my skills, whether it was my acting work, my improv work, my NLP work, my hypnosis work, when I run a training, I apply all those things in that context. So as you acquire skills, then you can combine all the different skills to create offerings, opportunities, to say, okay, what would someone pay me for if I mixed all of these different components together? Wow, I can create an offer that someone would feel is really valuable, would make change, and they would compensate me for it, right? Do you have a sense of what are some of the skills right now that you're beginning to develop?
Yes, but I have something I want to share.
Okay.
And then I'll get to that.
Yeah.
I think that when I think about, okay, what skills do I have? What skills do I want to invest in and grow within myself? I feel that there's two components that are necessary to really lean into that. I think one is listening, taking the time to really listen to what my heart is saying about what what am I here to do? What is the next step for me, and what feels like it's truthful? And then the other is courage to actually let go of maybe what isn't aligning with that, and to actually go and pursue the learning of that skill, or to let go of things that may be blocking that. For me, I think one skill that I want to nurture more is I have a very strong connection to nature, and I've witnessed just in my close relationships how I'm able to use nature to, I guess, facilitate connection in a way that being in a boxed room doesn't, and taking that step to go be in the discomfort of nature with other people, it's a really bonding experience, and I wish that others could have that experience. So that's just something that comes to mind. Another thing is,
so let's take that for example.
Okay.
That's a really good one, right? Because there's something in you that is already knowing on a deep level that you and nature are not separate.
Right.
You are nature, right? This is the unconscious assumption humans have, is like, I like to go out in nature. It's like, no, you are nature.
Yeah.
Like, we eat stuff out of poop and fertilizer, and like we are in this, the plants are giving oxygen and we're giving carbon dioxide. There's this symbiotic relationship between us. There's no separation. We are nature, right? There's, I don't know, trillions of microbes that live in my gut. Like, I am filled with bacteria and viruses and microbes. I am who I think I am. I'm way more than that, right? So inside you, there's a deep knowing that there's something nourishing being in nature, because you're coming back home. And then you see all these other people who don't have that knowledge. They don't have that understanding, or they haven't yet made that connection. And there's something about you is like, ooh, I can take people into nature. And when I do that, I help them with your calling of like, ooh, the skill to develop of listening to my heart. What does my heart want? So I always say the best way to learn something is to teach it. It sounds weird, but it's like, wow. So we can build something off of this, right? Like, and because I have friends who do this, I have friends that take people out into nature on adventure trips so that they can develop a relationship with their heart, to listen to the deeper calling, to find a deeper, more nourishing connection with themselves, right? Because they're out there creating in the world, and it's dysfunctional because they have no centeredness. They're not connected to themselves. They're running away from feelings and traumas and all this stuff that's in here that's bottled up, right? So we take something that you naturally are connected to. There's a calling there. There are people out there that would find that really valuable and do and pay money for, right? So like the next level of that is like kind of building on that as like if we're building a song, you got a 4/4 beat and a little bass line, and now we're going to put some keys and some vocals on it. There's a couple of pathways you can go about that. I have a buddy, Michael, here in Boulder, who certifies outdoor coaches, wilderness coaches, people who want to use nature as the canvas to help crack people open, to help bring them back home, to help facilitate healing, a sense of knowing, clarity, direction, all of these things. So that could be a skill set. As you're doing all your other stuff, there could be like a parallel certification where you have like a nature guide certification or coaching certification on how to use nature as the foundational platform to create change. Now, you may or may not build a business around that, but what a cool skill. 5 years go by, 10 years go by, where all of a sudden something presents itself, an opportunity, a calling, a knowing. You're like, ooh, I know how to do this, right? And then you can create an offer to offer people, and someone's like, yeah, man, I'm living in the city. I'm totally in my head. I'm stressed the hell out. I got to get out of here. Oh my God, Yehuda's got this thing. He's taking like a group of 10 people on this like 6-day wilderness thing where they're doing meditation and cold plunge and, doing all these really cool things. Like, I want to do that. And then all of a sudden someone's paying you $5,000 to go on a 6-day trip. Right. And so like just building off of that, right? Like work with what is, work with the thing that lights you up. And and the cool thing is your story becomes, wow, like I feel like at this stage in my game, the number one skill I can have is to listen to my heart. A lot of people poo-poo that because they're very head oriented. They're living in their head. And I've run trainings where someone's like, oh, we're not going to do this like emotional shit. There's too many problems. And I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of problems because you are not connecting and feeling to what's actually happening. Like your disconnection from emotion is causing all the chaos, right? So there's an approach that we call the head, heart, gut approach, right? So for you as a skill of being able to listen to your heart, what's meaningful, what's important, what's valuable, what lights you up, what opens you up, where do you feel an ache? What feels missing? Because that's another thing too. It's like, what's the thing that you're craving or feeling like when you see it? It's almost like it happens sometimes where you see someone doing something that in your heart, you know deeply you want to do. And there's this judgment or criticism or like a hatred of that person because they're embodying what you yourself aren't.
Yeah.
Right. So a lot of people who are successful have great vision and they have a good gut, meaning they know how to take action and get things done. But they've kind of lost the heart component of like, why am I doing this? What's important to me? What's meaningful? Like, can I create harmony and resonance between what's meaningful, important, the vision that creates and the movement that moves me there? And I feel like that's something that it sounds like you're trying to find coherence across. What are you doing? What's meaningful? What does that look like? And then
and something that I'm working on is I'm good about the head and heart, but it's trusting my gut instinct that I'm trying to lean into more. And that's almost like
it takes time to trust the gut because you don't have a lot of experience yet on the gut. What is the gut? What's fear? What's lust? What's programming? I don't know. So you have to run experiments.
Yeah.
Right? And so most of the time when you're up against something and this is a big part of the work that I do with leaders is that they externalize, what should I do? Tell me what to do. And they ask somebody else to tell them what to do, whether it's a CFO or a billionaire investor, something. They're looking for someone else to tell them what to do next instead of listening to their gut because they don't trust themselves, right? So, but trust takes time to build trust. So for you, it's, listening to the gut, taking a step and then reflecting back. I had a gut feeling. I moved forward and what emerged? And then you begin to train your unconscious. I call it the intention creation cycle, threading basically. And so anything that you've create in the world, this is actually a really good exercise anybody can do. Anything you have right now that at one point you didn't, at some point it came in as an idea, an insight, like me, go to massage school, anything. At one point you hadn't thought about it, then you thought about it, and now you have it, right? So the practice is anything that you've created, go back to the first moment that you had the idea. And in like a meditative state, get really quiet, get in your heart, and then feel the thing you've created. And then also bring the moment when you first had the thought of creating it. And it's almost like you overlay the two realities. It's like a quantum bending. You bend the past and the present. And what happens is your unconscious mind goes, wow, I didn't have it. And I had thought, and now I do. And now the story in your mind is anytime I have an intention, I create it.
Right.
I create my reality,
Another version of that I've heard of, which I'm going to start doing more now that we're talking about this, is doing it the other way with small tasks at first and then bigger and bigger, sitting down, getting into a meditative state, envisioning you on the other side of some task and then saying thank you to that self that completed it, watching you complete it and saying thank you. And then after you do it, getting back into a meditative state where you can thank the you who did the original meditation.
Sure. 100%.
And like, I've done it a few times. It's like, it's like time travel in a way and some energetic level. It's crazy.
And it depends on where people are at. Some people are in a place where they just have no sense of confidence. They've gone through, maybe they've lost their mojo. They've hit a rough patch and it's really difficult for them to imagine anything. And so sometimes we have to just track the timeline and let's kind of find a few things that you currently have and just rewire the nervous system because that's the next piece. So where that takes you is when an insight comes up, there's a knowing or an idea comes up or an intuition or, I want to do this. There's a knowing. It's like, oh, yeah, when I have these things, I make it happen. And then you go do it. That just becomes who you are.
Yeah.
You don't even have to practice. Because the thing about technique like that is you only do it to the point where you no longer have to do it because it's who you are. Like you do like breath work. People think breath work is a forever thing. And maybe for some it is, but for the most part, getting to a place where if my nervous system is regulated, do I have to do nervous system regulation techniques all the time? No, because I'm regulated, right? Like instead of treating the issue or the dysfunction, let's deal with what is causing the dysfunction and the issue and eliminate it. So therefore you don't have to do all the practices, right? Now for me, I used to have to do like 10 things just to get to zero. I used to call it like just to get to normal and functioning. There were so many things I had to do because I had a lot of uncleared and unresolved issues. And now I still have issues. We all have issues, right? And I don't have to do as much. I don't have to do as much of like, I have some people, I do like 3 hours of their biohacking stuff in the morning, which maybe you need, but for most of the time, most people don't need that much.
So put very simply, what does it take to get to zero?
It's a great question. It's different for everybody. It depends on where you are in your developmental journey. I could say for me, each day, like I have a 60 to 90 minute practice every morning that I do. And that's like my getting to zero. It's actually stepping away from all of the circumstances, all of the context, the content of my life, and coming back into a sense of wholeness and oneness, almost like a non-dual state. But I have like a contemplative practice in the morning that I do with tea. It's a tea ceremony. And it allows me to relax and center and bring my mind back into my body. And when my mind and my body are situated and I'm clear and I'm grounded and I have a sense of like what's meaningful, important, I can operate from that place. That's like getting to zero. And I've gotten to a place after about 3 years of doing that. Sometimes it's really nice just to wake up and then jump right into like working, especially if it's meaningful work. Like I'm working on a book and I'm writing in the morning. So sometimes I'll just get up and sit and just write, which has actually been kind of fun to do that. Because I feel like I don't need as much prep to get to that place where I can write, right? Because I've been doing this practice for so long. So that's one. Two is like, I think there's a level of physicality that the body requires. And just finding what the right dosage, because the difference between a toxin and a medicine is dosage and frequency. So I may do something at a dosage that's toxic. Right. So some people, maybe they work out 7 days a week and maybe that's not good for your body because you're not recovering. Right. Like what's the sweet spot? So there's a level of movement that I think for me is required. And I only see it after like 3 or 4 weeks of not moving, how my energy, my mood, my sense of stability, like when my legs feel strong, I feel strong. Like I am strong. And like when I'm working out and doing resistance training and I feel like my body feels strong, I'm strong. And that translates into my mind, into my emotions, into how I communicate, how I act, how I take actions. If I haven't worked out and I feel weak, that generalizes out how I'm communicating, how I'm leading, how I'm making things happen. Like the body is the unconscious mind. So I feel like the first place is to have a really grounded, strong body. That's a big piece. And then another one is I think there's a level of communication that's required and being able to speak what's true, what's real, like that authenticity you talked about in the human to human space with yourself first, like being honest with yourself. I think that's a really important thing, like actually getting honest about where you're at and how you feel and what's really going on. Because most of the time we spin stories and we're not really being honest with ourselves. And then being honest with somebody else, whether it's your intimate partner, your wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever that is. And having like deep, intimate relationships with others. I feel whenever I feel off and not on center and not at zero, most of my relationships when I'm with them will help pull me into zero, will pull me into that kind of like balanced, grounded, like bring me back to center because I'm off in some story or narrative or trauma trigger or whatever it is. Usually a good relationship will help bring you back to center.
I do also feel, though, that if you are extremely off balance and you're not keeping that in check, you're not being honest with yourself and you're not doing what you need to do to at least make an attempt to get back to zero, that can also spill out into relationships, into other people.
Yeah.
Just like externalizing your internal experience of chaos in a way. But I found that the people who love me most and the people who are closest to me know to look for, hey, where are you at? And kind of like rise above all of that. And that in and of itself can draw me back down.
Yeah. Just calling out, hey man, you okay? You seem a little off. What's happening? You want to talk about it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I have all my friends do that. Like the people that I surround myself will call me out.
Yes.
They're like, hey man, just checking in. Like what's up? Or you shared something and I just want to feed back to you what I heard. And hey, if you need someone to talk to, like those are the people you should surround yourself with. Those to me are real friends. Most people think like the party friends are their friends, and that's not really friends.
Something you bring up and you've brought up in other podcasts that I've listened to has to do with decision making. And when you've come to a fork in the road, is this the right decision? Is this not the right decision? And you shared this in your story of how you came to move to Boulder. And the question that you asked was, what would make this the right decision? So I've taken that to heart really, and started to just use it and think about it in my own life. Do you want to share a little bit about like that philosophy?
Yeah, I mean, there's a thing in the kind of self-development world, like if it's not a hell yeah, it's a hell no. And I think in certain contexts that could apply, but not all of them.
Yeah.
And there are many things in my life that I'm so grateful for that were not a hell yeah in the beginning, because to be a hell yeah, I mean, like in the way my nervous system worked, if I'm avoiding discomfort or if I'm fearful or I don't have a lot of belief in myself, when something emerges, it's not going to be a hell yeah. It's going to be a hell no. I'm not doing this. And whenever something's a hell no, I get really curious, go, interesting. Like a hell no, why? What's there? And I get really curious now. So I don't subscribe to the hell yeah, hell no approach. I just feel like, I don't know. I feel like I wouldn't be where I am today if I only did hell yeah stuff. I would, when I was younger, hell yeah would be smoking weed and partying and just like, yeah, there was a lot of hell yeahs that were not generative and flourishing. And as you get older, yeah, I lean into things where I get really curious, and maybe it's a thing I might get invited to that's not a hell yeah. And I may say no, because it's like, yeah, I don't really want to go to that. So I think in certain contexts, it's really meaningful. The decision-making approach, it's an interesting model, right? Because the thing is, like, it's nice to have different ways. If I'm stuck, if I'm having a hard time making a decision or moving forward, what are some tools or things that I can use to help open up movement, flow, to help this thing come out of a frozen state? So I use it all the time. I'm like, oh, what would make this the right decision? And is there something here that could emerge that would be really meaningful and purposeful in the grand scheme of the thing I'm trying to achieve? Like whatever my North Star is, right? If my North Star is to build, grow, and develop a business, and I get invited to something, I may not want to go to that thing, but if I think about it, it's like, wow, like this could be a portal into something really beautiful. So what would make this really a great experience is if, someone emerged that could be a really cool catalyst to the thing that I want to create. It's just a good way because I feel like the self-development process comes from self-understanding. And if you ask yourself the question, what would make this the right decision? Now you're starting to get into the heart. What do I want? What's meaningful? What's important to me? What am I looking for? And that question of what do I want is really hard to answer. It sounds really simple. It's like, what do you want? And it's like, well, and then when you start to really define it, it's like, is that really what I want? I don't know. And again, some people are really confused about what they want, right?
Yeah, and that question removes the binary yes or no of any decision making, where you have this package of a path you can go down, and it's either you buy the full package or you don't, or you can come to the table with conditions and say, okay, well, I'm willing to if this and this happens. And much of the time those conditions are in your control, or you can at least pursue them to try and get them to be part of this package.
That's the piece that you're getting clarity. It's like, wow, if these 3 things happen, this would make that the right decision. And then you're like, well, actually, I can make those 3 things happen. Like this becomes a fertile playground for those 3 things to occur. And then you can then so we go back into intention creation cycle, right? So if you're an identity of like, I'm someone who, when I set an intention, I make it happen. Because the opposite is what most people carry. It's like, oh, I never follow through. Like, oh, I wanted to do that, but I just couldn't get myself to do it. That narrative we have to like clear that narrative. That's like the most detrimental narrative. It's like, oh, I never follow through, or I can't get myself to do things. And you hear it a lot of, I really procrastinate, have a hard time, getting myself to take action. That may be true, but we've got to work on the narrative, because the narrative activates the behavior. Like, so I might be procrastinating around something, but if my narrative is like, wait a minute, when I set intention, I make things happen. Now that narrative overrides the behavior. It allows me to jump over the pattern behavior of avoidance, because I'm like, wait a minute, why am I avoiding this? I'm a guy who makes shit happen. Boom. Like, so because identity is what drives behavior. And so I'm always trying to find these ways of shifting that allow me more opportunity, more choices, more movement, right? And so I like what you're saying. It takes you out of the binary, this or that frame. And also when you identify the thing that would make it great, it's now in your control.
Right. And something that's can be chaotic, but also beautiful about being in your 20s, I feel, is that you're trying out different behaviors to see what your identity is or could be. I mean, I feel that it's a time to explore and try new things. That's why I know a lot of people, myself included, that just really started traveling and just like finding different pieces that make up the identity, so that, I hope to be at a point, and even now, where I can say, this is my identity and this is who I am. This is what I do. I do feel like, just intuitively, that this is a time to explore that and see what makes up one's identity. Yeah,
the identity piece is interesting, because on one hand, it's all made up.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, it's everything. So you kind of have to hold the paradox around identity. It's like it's completely constructed, and it's how everything flows. And then around identity is that you're multiple identities, right? We think that multiple identities is like a disorder, right? But who I am as a father is different than who I am as a coach, different than who I am as a husband. It's different than who I am as a facilitator, a leader, or a friend. Like, there's different identities and different ways that I show up depending on the context, right? So the context really depends on how I show up and who I am in that moment. And the key is, we want identity to be you can construct an identity. 'Cause I have a model around this that I'm working on, and I don't think I've ever really shared it. But when I think about like the self, I think about the part of me that's connected to the divine, that holds everything, all of my resources, all of my courage, creativity, clarity, love. Like, every resource is embodied in myself. It has all potential, right? That's the self. And then the identity is like a prism. You ever see the old like Dark Side of the Moon, Pink Floyd, right? Like, the light hits the prism, and then boom, there's this kind of expression of light, right? And so if my identity in a certain context, like if you construct an identity and yourself hits it, you can have a frequency of light that's different depending on the prism, right? Some people develop a very dysfunctional identity and a negative identity, or they've labeled themselves like, oh, I'm shy. So they take a behavior, which is a skill, by the way, like shyness. Like, I never thought about this when I was younger, but like being outgoing or meeting people, or, being easily, connecting with people easily as a skill versus an identity, right? Because when I was growing up, it's like, oh, either you're introverted or extroverted. Either you're good with people or not good with people. Either you're you can make friends easily or not make friends easily. That's like a skill. But what happens is people take their behavior and then they form an identity. So if I'm shy, so now myself hits the prism of shy as an identity. And when I go to a party, well, what does a shy person do? So now I'm living through the identity of a shy person. That's who I am. I'm shy. And therefore I'm going to like hide in the corner.
And that light gets filtered through the prism of shy. And it comes out maybe not the full spectrum of a rainbow.
Totally. And somehow this identity formed unconsciously when you were younger. So a lot of people, the disconnect is their internal being, like who they are is vibrant. There's all this light. And then they go to express it in the world and it's all like muddled because they have these dysfunctional identities. There's a lot of ways to reframe, reconstruct, rebuild identity. And there's like therapeutic work around that, like getting a really skilled therapist or a coach to help with the feedback loops of, wow, when I take so let's say like there's an identity of a shy person. And then I ask that person, okay, how would you like to be different? Up until now, you've been shy. How would you like to be? I'd like to be outgoing, or I'd like to be comfortable in my skin. Okay, so in this party, I could ask, okay, what would the comfortable in the skin you, like what would the confident you or comfortable you or outgoing you do in a situation like that? It's like, oh, like specifically, and I would actually map out the behaviors. Oh, I'd probably walk up to someone and say, hey, my name is Jane or John, or nice to meet you. What's your name? And I would ask them a few questions and then I would get in a conversation with them. And then I would actually have them go do that. And then they would then reflect on the behavior. Oh, look who I'm being. I'm being outgoing. I'm being, because the behavior then validates the identity. Because most people walk around with you've seen this all the time where someone says they're something and then their behavior is completely opposite.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's the greatest way to build lack of trust, like to break trust is like if someone says one thing and does another, or they pretend, they have the air of one thing, but really their behavior is the other, like there's a disconnect, like there's a dissonance. So we can reconstruct identity, but you have to then slowly titrate, like you were saying, like, oh, what's the thing that I want to feel on the other side? And then I'm going to do that. Okay, what kind of person was I? I was a courageous person. Like I was a manifester. Like you can then label yourself and construct an identity. Wow, I'm a manifester. I do what I say I'm going to do.
Right.
What a great narrative. What a great identity.
Right. So on a personal note, I've stopped doing my podcast for a while now, and I've had some resistance to it. It's been like, well, a podcaster is someone who goes on and they're their best self before the camera and their guests. And I shifted that recently, and I'm like, I'm going to start doing it again, because what if I'm maybe not the best person I could be, but I'm just the most real that I could be. And, maybe that's what the best podcaster does. They show up, and whether they're having a good day or a bad day, they're just honest about it. And maybe someone else will relate. So like, yeah. And then you take action on it, and it totally shifts that previously boxed in identity that you had, and it's something new. And usually that something new is beautiful, because you've broken out of some restricting piece of yourself.
Yeah. And I'll tie it back to your wilderness program that you're going to launch. We're going to see this in your unconscious, right? Which is, there's an aspect in wilderness where you can begin to get people to become aware of the box they live in is the box of the walls are assumptions, right? Like all the assumptions that you have about life I had a client who was trying to pitch a bunch of investors, and I recommended someone for him, and he's like, he doesn't do those types of investments. And I was like, great, I want to just show you just constructed a wall based on an assumption that may or may not be true, right? And that led us down a road of him then reaching out to the investor saying, hey, like, I'm not quite sure. I have a sense that you wouldn't be interested in this, but I wanted to show you something. And boom, that guy invested in the company, right? And that set us on a journey of any assumption he makes, he now tests and challenges those assumptions. Like, so for you had an assumption, a podcaster is someone who just is their best self. And I'm not feeling like my best self. So therefore I'm not going to podcast, right? So the assumption stops you from doing something. which to me, podcasting is a skill. It's an ability. It's your ability to sit down, connect, talk, share ideas, like just create flow. What a great skill, right? That you can then take anywhere. There's like a million different pathways that could evolve. You could have your own talk show. You could be on XM radio. I don't know. Like, who knows where that in 5 years, 10 years, this skill can be then multiplied.
Right. It's the acting degree that leads into public speaking.
It's the thing where you're launching a company and you're sitting down with an investor for dinner and you guys are just jamming. They're like, wow, I fucking love talking to you, man. We just jammed in all this stuff because you're grounded, you're relaxed, you're conversational, and you know how to like open people up, talk about meaningful things and create connection, right? That skill of being able to create rapport is also something that people really need to focus on. Because if you can't create rapport with people, there's no opportunities for you. Everything that's going to come into your life is going to come in through a portal that's created through real human connection. Especially now, like, well, maybe with AI, maybe it's a portal with an agent, but that's also, it's a new frontier, right? But up until now, everything that most people have has come through some relationship, right? So what a great skill to build relationships. Like, even if you're not great at it, it's something you can get better at if you focus and set your intention and then find all these different programs that help with like improv or relationship development or communication skills or speaking skills or all these different things. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, I'm really glad we got to do this.
Yeah, I'm glad we got to do it, man. This is definitely really cool. And I'm happy to sit down with you. Maybe we can sketch out like how to take this basic skill that you have, this knowing of how to use nature to take people deeper, and then begin to go, okay, what skills could you then layer on top of that? That would be really cool that people would love to pay you money for. So not only are you doing something that's really meaningful, purposeful, you get to drop in and relax, you get to share with people, and they have a transformational experience.
Yeah, I'd love that.
Yeah,
and I appreciate it. And I hope just from this little conversation in Boulder, Colorado, that one or two or maybe more people are impacted or shifted in some sort of way, even if it's by 1 degree. I hope that I wish that this conversation has impact on the lives of others.
Cool, man. Good to be here. Thank you.
Thanks for being here.